So you and your partner and your podcast are breaking up. What are you going to do now? How can you proceed and get through all of this? Well, hi, I'm Gordon Firemark, and I'm the podcast lawyer, and I'm going to answer these questions for you. Who gets the house? Who gets the kids? Your relationship with your podcast co-host has blown up, and the question is, what do we do now? So I'll be right back after this. Hi there, I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and I help creatives and business people in the podcasting industry to cover their legal bases and protect themselves and the things that they create. And this is Legit Podcast Pro, a short weekly show where I offer you some legal tips and information, strategies, and I answer your questions so you can grow your podcast like a pro. And here's the scenario. So you start a podcast, you get a couple of episodes in, maybe a few episodes, and then you bring on your friend to help out, to co-host with you, and maybe take on some of the workload. Maybe you're doing the planning and producing the content, and they're showing up and co-hosting and handling some of the editing and the show notes and things. Or maybe it's a different or disproportionate workout of who does what. Maybe you've formed an LLC together and you're both named as members, or maybe you skipped that step and you're just sort of flying by the seats of your pants. And everything is going pretty well. Your audience is growing. You're monetizing, maybe or maybe not. And you've got, I don't know, say tens of thousands of followers on social media. Nice download numbers. Things are really looking good. But then something happens. Maybe it's a disagreement about money, or maybe it's about the direction of the show. Maybe it's about one of the people involved not feeling valued or not feeling like the other is pulling their weight. Maybe it's something that outsiders would consider totally stupid. It doesn't matter. You got into it. The friendship is burned. It's smoldering on what used to be the common ground between you. So now one or both of you wants out. What do you do? Well, first, let's get you armed with a bit of basic business law knowledge. When two or more people come together to do business, and for this discussion, podcasting is in fact doing business, those people are considered partners. Almost every jurisdiction will have a default partnership act of some sort that addresses this. And if you've been smart about it, you might even have a written partnership agreement that outlines what to do in various different kinds of situations. Or you've got that LLC or whatever. But when partnerships break up, the partnership is said to be dissolved. And dissolving a partnership or an LLC usually involves gathering up all the assets, selling them off, settling all outstanding debts and accounts, and then distributing what's left, if anything, to the partners in proportion to their ownership interests. Now, if there's a written partnership agreement, it might include laying out what those ownership interests are, of course, but it also might include a buy-sell provision, which would allow for one partner to continue the business by buying out the other's interest. And there are a number of different ways that this can work. I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. But if you formed an LLC or a corporation, well, it's basically the same scenario. If you have the formal written operating agreement that you should, read it carefully. What does it say about withdrawal or removal of a member or a manager? And what does it say about the member's interests and how they get calculated and dealt with? What does it say about buying out a departing member's interest? If you've got it in writing, the procedure is all going to be laid out right there for you. Follow that and you are good. Document the process carefully, make sure the correct papers get signed and filed, the payments get made. Look, I know I've made this sound pretty simple, excuse me, but you probably will need a lawyer to help make sure it's all being done right. But what if you don't have a formal written agreement that lays all this stuff out? Well, most state LLC laws also have a set of default provisions in place to deal with this kind of eventuality. So that's where you look for your answers. The good news is it's usually pretty consistent from state to state. Most places, if the parties can't agree on the value of a company, there's a mechanism to get an appraisal or multiple appraisals, and then those are used to establish the buy and sell price for the company. Now, in either situation, it is easier on everybody if they can come to an agreement on how to end the relationship and move on. But if not, then a court proceeding is necessary. The court will enforce the terms of the written agreement or of the applicable statute, if there's one, if no written agreement. And there will be lawyers and depositions and accountants and witnesses and hearings and ultimately, it is unlikely that anyone will be really happy with the outcome. So if you're facing a breakup, this is what you may have to look forward to. Call it a podvorce if you want. Well, if you're facing that breakup, try to talk it through. Whether the goal is to stay together or to split up, you have to communicate. Work things out as best you can. Get some legal advice. Talk to a lawyer. Talk to two lawyers. Talk to as many people as you can. And both parties should do this. And then stand up for your rights. Don't just cave because it's going to be a headache. Stand up for what's right. You will not regret standing up for your rights more than you would regret not. And that's that. Get some help. Get a skilled negotiator or a mediator or an arbitrator or a lawyer to help you work things out and get the things figured out about what you're going to do. Negotiate the terms of the dissolution and try to be reasonable. Don't let your ego or their ego get in the way of smart solutions. Now, you only have control over you and what you say and do and how you react to the other party. So just don't let your ego get in the way. And then when you do come to terms, getting a settlement agreement in writing is really important. That's what makes it final and binding. And then once that's done, do whatever steps are necessary to record or register or file it with the various government agencies so that you are out and clear of any potential risk or liability as soon as possible. The trouble with things when partners break up is that sometimes the outside world doesn't know that they're not still partners, or the government hasn't been told that they're not still partners. And then they get sort of a rude slap in the face. One partner has left and moved on and doesn't expect anything more to do with the show. And then they get a slap in the face when the government comes looking for taxes or a creditor comes looking for payment of their bill that you had nothing to do with. So you want to make sure that you register and make it evident in the law that you're no longer a part of the partnership, so you're free and clear of that liability. But the bottom line is, if you have an opportunity early on in your relationship, it makes good sense to get some kind of an agreement or an LLC or something down in writing. I call it a podcast prenup, and I think it's really, really important. And I'm happy to help you out with that if that's what you need, but form an LLC or get a co-production agreement or a co-host agreement or whatever it's going to be. Really, anybody who's involved in the podcast should have a contract in writing so that their relationship doesn't confound things when it's time, if it ever comes time, to end the relationships and break up the podcast. So that's it for today. I am Gordon Firemark, and this is Legit Podcast Pro. That's it for this episode. It's brought to you by the free Legit Podcast Pro community, where we help each other grow and prosper with our podcasting ventures. So join now. Visit legitpodcastpro.com, and I'll see you again real soon. Once again, I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer. This is Legit Podcast Pro, and I'll see you again next Thursday at around 4 p.m. Pacific time. Have a great one.